Midfoot strike running has been gaining in popularity over recent years with the thought that landing on the midfoot rather than on the heel is going to cause less impact, stress, and potential pain to the body. This probably does have some truth to it, but if you're going to try to transition from heel striking to midfoot strike running, it would be helpful to know how to do it. It isn't as simple as leaning forward as you run, as some people might say. There is a different core technique involved in midfoot strike running when compared to heel strike, and that is what I'm going to analyze for you in this video. If you like the video, make sure to click that like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell to get notifications for my future videos. Now, before I get into the technique of midfoot strike running, I do want to say that a lot of people have been trying to extrapolate the idea of midfoot strike running and the reduced impact to midfoot strike walking, and there's no correlation there. When we're running, it makes a lot of logical sense that we can propel our body into the air and land on the midfoot with the entire center of gravity over the foot directly. Many people try to say, well, that means we should also be walking with midfoot strike and walking with the center of gravity landing right over the midfoot. But if you think about it, this is really illogical, because when we're walking, one foot is always on the ground. So in order to land with the center of gravity underneath the foot, you would essentially have to be marching in place. Any distance my lead foot gets in front of the body is going to be a foot landing in front of the center of mass, unless we bend over this way and pitch the center of mass forward relative to the rear foot. This obviously is a bad idea. Now, it is possible to bend my knees and walk midfoot like that, but it is incredibly inefficient, and also it is not landing with the center of gravity over the striking foot. So either way you put it, midfoot strike walking does not make a lot of sense. Midfoot strike running can make a lot of sense for people, and if you want to change from heel strike to midfoot strike, let's get into the technique. There's going to be 3 phases of the core movement when we're landing on the midfoot, and that's going to differ from how we land on the heel, and I'm going to show you the difference between both. Let's start with the main position that we need to recognize when we're landing on the midfoot, and I'll land as if I'm going to land on my left foot here. What we're going to be doing when we land on midfoot is we're going to have our rear leg, the hip is going to be in extension. Our upper torso is going to be turning forward on the side of the standing leg, and my lower abs are going to be tucking on the side of the standing leg. This is at the point of landing, and this is also the core movement that is going to cause the landing. So this is the idea here. Extension of my right hip, tucking of my pelvis, which is going to keep my spine and pelvis aligned over the standing leg, and my upper torso is turning forward on the left. This is the core movement that is going to be going on at the point of midfoot strike. My standing knee is going to be in flexion, and my standing ankle is going to be actively plantar flexing towards the ground. This is the position, and this is, in the walking code, the core technique of reach. Extension of the active hip, upper torso turning towards the active hip, lower torso turning away from the active hip. Another example of this movement would be a jab punch. That is a jab punch, extension of the hip, tucking here, upper torso turning that way. That is the core movement that we're going to be using when we are landing in midfoot strike. Now, from here, there are going to be 2 movements that are going to propel the body off the ground. The first is going to be a push from the standing leg hip And then the final motion that's going to propel the body off the ground is what I call, in the walking code, pulse. In push, we simply have to change our active hip from our extending right hip to an extending left hip, and that begins to push the body up. I will just do this a few times. You can see I'm going to extend my left hip, keeping the tuck with the left lower abs and keeping forward movement with the left upper abs. That is a push. The push, however, is not enough to get the body off the ground. I can push really hard and I won't leave the ground. What actually causes the body to leave the ground when we're running is the upper core rotation at the end of that push turning towards my standing leg. That is going to be an imperceptible, very quick motion that is going to take the push and turn it into a pulse. That is going to get the body off the ground. Pulse in Tai Chi is a technique called ward off, and we're getting all of this propulsive energy by turning the upper torso and lower torso towards the extending hip, and it propels the body. It also extends the knee and plantar flexes the ankle at the same time and gives a very energetic propulsing motion that in Tai Chi I said is called ward off, but I call pulse in the walking code because what it does in general is pulse the body in some sort of direction, whether that is forward or backwards. But we are transitioning from push to pulse. And then after the pulse, once we leave the ground, we have to land. This is where heel striking and midfoot striking is going to be very different. When we heel strike, what happens is this. We pulse off the ground and then we flex our lead leg hip to reach it forward, and then we're going to land on the heel. When we midfoot strike run, we are not going to flex the forward leg hip up, creating that heel strike. What we're going to do is continue extending the rear leg that propulsed us off the ground, that rear leg hip, and all we're going to do is change the lower abdominal rotation from the left, if I'm pulsing off of the left leg, and I'm going to switch it to the right and land on the midfoot. So basically I am changing my lower ab rooting of my left leg. Even though I'm in the air, I'm going to tuck on the right, and that's going to bring the foot down to the ground. I was already, when I was in the air, if you recall, extending my left hip. The pulse begins to turn my right upper torso forward, and so all I have to do to land is tuck on the right with my lower abs, and that's going to create the midfoot strike. Hard to do this in slow motion in the air, of course, but I will do my best to demonstrate. We have push, pulse, and reach. Repeat again, push, pulse, and reach. Push, pulse, reach. And then we're going to sequence that, of course, over and over, and we're going to get a midfoot strike run. For midfoot strike running, the key thing to remember is to keep the standing leg that you have pulsed off of extended behind the body when you land. Do not pull it in, which is what you would do in a heel strike run. We keep it extending behind the body. The other thing to make sure you don't do is lift the swing leg hip up in the air after the pulse, because that's going to then end up with a heel strike. Some key points to understand in midfoot running are the following. There is a slight forward lean in the body, but it is caused by the rotation of the core, not by trying to lean forward. The center of gravity is directly over the foot as it lands. There is a faster cycle rate compared to heel striking because there are fewer core movement phases. So if you're interested in changing from heel strike to midfoot strike when you run, follow the tips in this video and you should be successful. Thanks for watching.